Welcome everyone, I am Xavier and this is the pitch meeting for Blood for the Blood God, the newest, hottest, potential expansion for Borderlands 4. Now, let's start with the important. Who is this for? Well, who else than you? Or, if I want to be more specific, anyone working at Gearbox Studios that could help make this great idea into a reality. As for the presentation structure, we'll start with a broad overview of Blood for the Blood God, then go over the main mechanic of the fight, then the boss fight itself, which is the longest section by far. Then we'll have a short look at some loot ideas, we'll cover the pricing and release, and end with a summary, both to reiterate the important points and to give a shortened version for those that don't have time to watch all of it. The timestamp should be on the description. For those who decide to stick around, I also included an optional section to explain why I'm doing this. However, since it's not necessary to understand Blood for the Blood God, I put it at the very end. Broad overview. Blood for the Blood God is a short piece of additional content themed around blood and 80s rock music. How I see it, the content should take place in Circadia Burns around the mid-game, but that part really is not that important. The content itself has two parts, a short intro quest and a boss fight. The story is that the Vault Hunters are sent a challenge, an invitation to fight from a mysterious gladiator, one who is known by others as the Blood God. And the intro quest is simply the Vault Hunters gaining the right to fight him, maybe also gaining some quest weapons along the way. Of course, while fighting him, you should have some sick-ass rock music playing, and the guiding principle behind everything is that there should always be some action that syncs with the beat. The design philosophy for the boss is that it needs to be fun and needs to make you feel like a badass, first and foremost. This is Borderlands we're talking about. In terms of skill, it should feel like a raid boss. Add spawning regularly, multiple phases, the boss moving and attacking, all of that. The fight takes place in a Colosseum-type arena, which we'll talk more about later. And now, I'd like to put out a disclaimer. I am not a game designer or a concept artist. I tried my hardest to follow these guiding principles and come up with interesting and unique solutions, but they might be a bit rough around the edges. So please keep that in mind for the rest of the presentation. The main mechanic of the fight and the solution I found to have action on the beat is the hype bar. I haven't found a better name. It has two functions. First, to show you when to hit the boss, a bit like Guitar Hero. Second, it needs to show you how much hype has accumulated so far, how exactly it's displayed, how the hype works, what happens when it's at maximum. All these things are heavily subject to change. There needs to be a lot of playtesting and fine-tuning to get it right. What I'm about to talk about in the next section is the ideas I've had for the inner workings of this mechanic. Main mechanic. How to hit the beat is far and away the hardest thing to choose, and the one with the most influence on other parts of the design for the boss fight. There's a trade-off between player agency and having a tight encounter. You could have something that feels amazing on certain builds, less on others, or a one-size-fits-all solution that isn't as satisfying but feels the same for everyone. One smart thing you could do is give players specially made quest weapons, where you wouldn't have to worry about if your build is right for the job or not. Now, the rest of the presentation is made on the assumption that you should still be able to have fun, even if you're not using those hypothetical quest weapons, so that players have complete freedom over what they use. Though I still think it's an option worth considering. The solution I took is the simplest one, where any damage inflicted on the boss during the node time frame counts as hitting the beat. It doesn't matter if you inflict damage 1, 2, 5, 1,000 times during that time frame, it still counts as 1. Of course, it will ignore damage over time as it would derail everything. As for how to prevent players from simply using automatic weapons and firing non-stop for hours, Any damage taken before the note timeframe counts as missing that note, no matter if you actually hit it afterwards. As for what hitting the beat does, it gives you hype. How does it give you hype? What does missing a note do? Well, each note gives progress speed to the hype bar, not points. Missing notes detracts speed, with the minimum progress speed being 0% per second. All these choices were made to prevent players from feeling like they're losing progress each time they make a mistake. As for how much speed you can have, I chose 2% per second as the maximum value, but that can change easily. I also chose to have a limited fixed set of speed values to limit computing power usage every time a player goes and hits the boss. Each note you hit puts you one position higher, and missing puts you at least one position lower. Depending on your current position, missing a note can shift you down more. If you're going to lose a lot more progress if you're at the max and you miss versus if you're already at the bottom. I simply did this to really reward those who consistently hit the beat. Now, for what hype does, its function is simply to reduce the boss's damage reduction. Let's say the boss starts at what, 80% damage reduction? By the time the hype bar is almost full, that value should be close, reaching 40%. When you finally hit the 100% hype, the damage should drop to 0 and have some kind of behavior change from the boss. Talking about that, with the main mechanic of the fight explained, it is now time to move on to the fight. The arrival. Some ominous door opens, landing our Vault Hunters into a grand entry hall, which is just a long hallway with some decorations themed after blood and rock. Blood bags, piles of meat, old posters. You name it, we have it. At the end, you have some vending machines along with the entrance proper to the arena. For the arena itself, you should think Borderlands Coliseum, an oval shape with the center section, the stage, being elevated. You also have a few pillars with statues on them, spectators behind fences, and if you look up, you should be able to see that the whole arena is actually within a sinkhole. For the lighting, the natural light coming from up top should be more than enough. Here's a drawing I've made of the arena, where the sections in the darker shade of blue will be elevated versus the ones in the lighter shade. You can see the pillars I've talked about, the center stage with some stairs, and the entrance to the arena on the right, an entrance from where the Blood God will emerge. The Blood God is a large humanoid figure sporting heavy metal armor. It has 4 arms, 2 of which are occupied by guitars and the other 2 by guns. It also has thick legs with tubes going from the torso to some strange contraption on each of its legs. Finally, you can see on top of the screen 3 bars: shield, armor, and health. As phase 1 begins, the boss has 2 types of attacks. It can use its guns, which fire relatively quickly but are weak, or it can use its bass guitar. The guitar fires slow and somewhat tracking projectiles, a bit akin to musical missiles, which is what you see on the right here. The boss will stay on the center section, the stage, and will melee players if they get too close. As for the ants, there are 2 types. First, regular bandits and psychos with guns and melee weapons. Second, there's the groupies, which are just regular enemies that wield musical instruments. And the groupies will spawn by climbing over the spectator fence, slowly making their way to the center stage. When they make it there, they'll start playing their instrument of tune, making you lose some hype. They're not supposed to be particularly tanky or numerous. They're just here to force players to have some awareness of their surroundings and not tunnel vision on the boss. When the high bar is full, or there's only 30% of the shield remaining, the boss becomes enraged. He charges the contraptions on his legs, which turns out are pistons, and violently slams the stage with them. The stage falls to the ground and the columns collapse, making it so the arena is now completely flat, except for some debris from the columns. The boss unlocks a new attack, the Piston Slam, which after some charge up creates a shockwave that instantly covers the floor of the whole arena. You can dodge it by simply jumping at the right time. While enraged, the boss will be more aggressive and will attack more frequently, but players won't need to hit the beat anymore. Why is that? Well, the roles are now reversed. A high bar, instead of indicating when to attack the boss, will now indicate when the boss will do a big attack like the Piston Slam. It will help prevent the hit the beat mechanic getting old too quickly by letting players play at their own rhythm for a little bit. It will also help the players dodge attacks even if they are not directly always looking at the boss. When the shield reaches zero, the battery powering it, depicted here on the top right, shorts, causing the shield to break. It switches to the armor bar, and then the boss slams its pistons against the ground again, causing it to completely collapse all over the arena, and sending both the Vault Hunters and it hurling down towards the second arena. Upon somewhat safely landing, the boss ends its rage and the second phase begins. Second phase. When you look around at the new arena, players should feel as if they've just crashed through the floor into the backstage, because that's exactly what it is. Here you have two sections. First, a lower center section and an outer higher section. In a sense, the height is inverted versus what it was for the previous arena. The center section, where the boss will be, has a simple concrete floor and is lit by the sunlight. The outer section, a somewhat narrow, dimly lit corridor going around the center, is composed of trusses, scaffoldings, and has wires going everywhere. Here's a drawing I made of that arena. It has the same oval shape as before, with inverted height, and there is a part of it that's more collapsed, which the players can use as a ramp to go up to the outer section. They can also use their grappling hooks, with their grappling points being represented by the three red dots in the picture here. As for the gameplay, it is mostly more of the same. Players still need to hit the beat, maybe a different one. You have ads spawning, the boss uses both his pistons and the guitars. Two differences is that the groupies will now play their instruments while on the upper part of the arena, and the boss has replaced one of his guns with a cable tray, which he likely just yanked from a wall somewhere. You could also have an additional note, with each note being a different body part, but you don't want to overcomplicate things. When the high bar gets full or the armor reaches 30%, the boss becomes enraged again. The Blood God will grab his defunct battery shield and impale it on the cable tray he's holding, creating an improvised electric guitar. The Blood God, being somewhat reasonable, will of course do the reasonable thing upon acquiring an electric guitar. That is, to start a Welcome to the Jungle-esque guitar solo where every note generates an electric arc. And with that, the enraged phase gameplay resumes. His new attack is, of course, the electric arcs, with most of them dissipating into the environment just due to how fast the guitar solos are. Otherwise, it is more of the same, like the enraged state of phase 1. The boss is more aggressive, and the high bar now indicates when the boss will attack. When the armor reaches 0, the Blood God's actual armor falls off, and it switches to the red health bar. He then smashes the floor with his pistons, visually damaging it, but not doing anything else. And so, the third phase begins. Phase 3. With his armor off, you can now see his bare arms. You can also see a lot better the tubes coming from the torso to the legs, the pistons. There is still some light armor covering the torso, so it's not bare-chested. His four hands are now occupied by both guitars. If the player looks closely, they'll be able to see that the head is in reality mechanical. The phase 3 gameplay is once again more of the same with some differences. The electric guitar gets added to his normal attack pool, The piston slams now make debris fall, and the boss unlocks one new attack, the grab. It simply goes, grabs one nearby enemy, crushes it over its head, which gives him some HP back. You can prevent him gaining HP by simply killing the enemy yourself. The point at which the boss automatically becomes enraged is now at 50% of his health instead of 30. Talking about that, upon becoming enraged, his head explodes. The Blood God then emits a large metal scream, damaging Vault Hunters and killing every enemy on the screen. He follows that by slamming his pistons on the floor, collapsing it, sending both it and the Vault Hunters towards the final stage of this epic confrontation. Final stage. The arena, mostly made up of a natural cave, is large and asymmetric. You have stalactites for grappling points, an altar to the blood god on one side, and a shallow pool of blood on the largest section of the arena, which is where the boss will stay. If you want to imagine it, the picture on the top right here is a good start. There should be a bit of natural light, but most should come from torches, with red also being a very prominent color. Here's a drawing I made of the final arena. You can see the altar on the right, the blood pool with the grappling points in the middle, and some asymmetric overhangs on the bottom left and at the top. Now, as for the blood god, what you thought was a torso is in fact a giant mouth. It doesn't open fully, you can see sinews and tendons keeping it together, but it is enough for the creature to scream. You can also see two small eyes, one of each side of the mouth, with a weirdly familiar rectangular pupil. All in all, it should be somewhat reminiscent of the Rampager, but with some differences. Kinda like if they were long lost cousins. For the gameplay, even though it is a spectacular transition, it is still just the enraged state of Phase 3. The hype bar is already filled and indicates the boss's attacks. He has access to his entire moveset and two new attacks to boot. The first is a metal scream that doesn't really do much, and is just cool. For the ads, it does change. The enemies are mostly regular bugs, like Varkids, with one special type, the Blood Bug. It is tanky, and after spawning will slowly make its way to the boss. When within range, the boss will grab and eat the Blood Bug, restoring some of his health, and making a blood laser come out of its mouth. Why, do you ask? Well, why not? And with that, the fighting continues until the health reaches 0, where it finally dies. A big explosion follows, and the wall to the altar goes down to reveal a loot room, along with a fast travel station. The end. Now for the part most gamers will care about. The loot. What the loot is depends heavily on what's already in the base game and its other expansions. You don't want to have a near copy of another gun or cosmetic. As such, every idea I propose might already exist, so I won't spend much time here. What's important is respecting the themes of blood and rock, and I might have some ideas for loots based around the fight. First, the boss drops the equipment. Let's start with the Torg assault rifle, the bass guitar. It fires slow-moving music notes with a slight tracking and a decent explosive radius. Then you have a Vladov shotgun, the electric guitar that shoots many projectiles that arc to other nearby enemies, but that also have a steep falloff. For the ordnance, depicted on the right here, you have the Order Blood Laser. It has very low ammo and decent damage, but you can hold the trigger to continue firing as a continuous stream instead of just a pulse, at the cost of draining your own HP. Finally, there's the rep kit, which will consume one charge when you initiate a slam attack, no matter your current health. It will use that charge to boost your slam, giving it extra damage, and most importantly, a ridiculous amount of extra radius. For the quest rewards, we have the cosmetics. You should have one head and one skin per Vault Hunter, with anything else being a bonus. For the head, you could have a mechanical head like a blood god, or a head full of luscious hair to make any metalhead jealous. For the skin, of course, a repeating blood bag pattern. Why blood bags? To understand why, we have to talk about the release. It won't be added to the game on release as it's already been 5 days ago by the time I'm recording this. It could be added to one of the 4 bounty packs or to one of the 2 bigger story packs, but I do feel it doesn't fit the thematic of blood enough. You could ask for pagan blood sacrifices, but the logistics of tracking this are way too complicated, and there might be some small legal issues as well. You could also ask for people to go donate blood for a code for the DLC, which is more difficult, but still a bit of a nightmare on the logistics side. There's also the fact that requirements to be able to donate blood are very stringent, and so you remove a lot of people from being able to play it altogether. And so, what do? Well, you need some kind of righteous bloody cause. And I found no righteous cause more bloody than the Leukemia Research Foundation. That's right, Blood for the Blood God would be a charity fundraiser event. The DLC would be sold at $5 and all of the revenue would go towards charity. Now, some may ask, why not just donate the money instead? Which is unfortunately a good point. Since the proceeds all go to charity, development will be done at a loss. That kind of call is certainly a hard one to make. However, I do think that making Blood for the Blood God will do more good than just donating the amount development would cost. First, it will raise a lot more awareness towards the foundation, which is always great. Secondly, there is a good chance that it will generate more than the cost to make it. I don't have the necessary numbers to make any serious conclusions, but considering how big the Borderlands franchise is, I think it's really not that unlikely. At the end, the decision is not in my hands, but if it were up to me, I think it is a worthy endeavor. And that's it. I have nothing else to add. Now into the summary. As said before, Blood for Blood God is a small piece of downloadable content, around $5 in price, and where the proceeds from people buying it would go towards charity. To be more specific, it would go towards the Leukemia Research Foundation. As for the content, it's simply an introduction quest, the boss fight, and the loot. For the intro quest, the Vault Hunters gain the right to fight the Blood God, a bloodthirsty gladiator. Leading into the boss fight. The DLC is themed around blood, unsurprisingly, and around 80s rock/heavy metal music. The boss fight is the main focus of the expansion. Talking about that, the fight takes place in a large arena, akin to what the Colosseum would look like if it was on Kairos instead of Earth. The design philosophy behind it is pretty simple. It needs to be fun, and it needs to have some kick-ass music, hopefully being the kind of boss fight that people enjoy while farming for the perfect drop. The main mechanic of the fight is that there should always be some action that's synced with the beat, be it the players or the boss himself. Players are incentivized to do it, while some of the boss's attacks will be synced to the music. Other than that, to make a long story short, it's a raid boss designed around its themes. The Blood God uses musical instruments like bass or electric guitars to attack, and there's a crowd you need to hype up, and it ends against the bloodthirsty Eldritch Abomination. Just another Tuesday for our Vault Hunters. And with that, we are finished. I won't take any more of your time. Thank you so much if you already watched all of it, and I wish all of you a wonderful day. Now, if you decide to stick a bit longer, why? Simply put, it's to prove to myself that I can finish a project. I'm someone who loves great music, great games, and who loves even more great music with great games. And so once, I had an idea. What if you had a boss fight, not only with great music, but with music being an integral part of the fight. That sounds like an incredible idea. I knew very early on that it would be within Borderlands, a franchise I love, but I still needed to develop the idea a lot more. Which is where the problems start for me. I am someone with plenty of big, ambitious ideas, but they stay as ideas. When the time comes to actually put in the effort and develop them into something tangible, I procrastinate. I tell myself, I'll do it later when I have the time or energy. Was supposed to be done today will be done tomorrow, then the day after, then the week, the month, and before I know it, months or even years have passed, and the idea is still nothing more than an idea. So, this project is a way for me to finally break this curse. And what do I expect to come out of it? To be honest, not much. Realistically, if I'm lucky, I might get some feedback on my ideas in the presentation, but that's where it will likely end. Of course, the dream would be for the Blood God to become something real, one way or another, but I'm not counting on it. For now, having finished one of my projects and made an idea into something I can be proud of is more than enough for me. Anyways, to anyone who's made it, to anyone who's made it this far, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. And well, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye bye.